What's up, everyone? Tyler DeLuca here, back again with my top takeaways from this past week in the WNBA. And this week we learned who the WNBA All-Stars are going to be. And I have two names that I'm very shocked aren't on that list. One more than the other. But let's start with Kennedy Carter, who is not my top snub, but I felt should have been an All-Star. Across the board this year, I mean, if you've been following the WNBA for a while and are familiar with Kennedy Carter's story, this has been a redemption year for Kennedy, and it all comes down to me, the atmosphere that Teresa Weatherspoon has been able to build in Chicago. It's something that we've heard Angel Reese talk about, who is also an All-Star. It's something that we've heard Kennedy Carter talk about, who should have been an All-Star in my eyes. She starts the season on the bench and is still immediately producing. It's always been about an opportunity for Kennedy in my eyes, and her taking advantage of that opportunity and being put in a space where she can be freely herself, both personality-wise and play-style-wise, and we are seeing that activate in Chicago. If you've been following Kennedy since her time in college at Texas A&M, you know this is what she does. She is a bucket. A bucket. And I would have loved to see her on the All-Star team. I mean, like I said, it's just the environment that Chicago has built that has allowed her to do this, and she's credited it, and I've just been so impressed by, not that this is surprising, like I said, if you know what Kennedy does on the basketball court, you shouldn't be surprised by what you're seeing with this, but it's just nice to see, it's fulfilling to see, and I would have loved to see her in the All-Star game, both just because I think she deserves it, and also just the play style that she could bring to the All-Star game. I genuinely think she had a very real chance at being the All-Star MVP if she was given the chance to do so. Just because that's, like, she's like a player that is just built for the atmosphere of the All-Star game. Just a fun hooper. A straight up hooper. And I would have loved to see Kennedy have that opportunity to be in the All-Star game, and I felt like she deserved it. Another player I thought that deserved it more than anybody that was off the list, and certainly someone that when I was kind of racking off my brain, you know, to who was going to be the All-Stars before the list was dropped, was near the top of my list, if not at the very top of it, Ezi Magbegor. I can't believe Ezi Magbegor is not an All-Star. I am shocked. The only thing I could think of was if there was something to do with the Australian Olympic team, and that's maybe why she's not participating. But that's the I haven't personally seen anything that would indicate that. And to recent memory, she's the biggest snub on a WNBA All-Star team that I've seen. The scoring average is down a little bit. But when you add Nneka Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith, and you obviously still have Jewel Lloyd on the team, like that feels like it's bound to happen. But if you're watching the games, which I don't know if it's a West Coast thing, you know, and people maybe not watching, I don't know. But Ezi has absolutely taken steps on the offensive end. She has a career high in rebounds. She's probably the second best defensive player in the league behind Asia. Like, there's no excuse at all for Ezi Magbegor to not be an All-Star. It is egregious. And so if you're gonna put people on, you gotta take people off. I felt, frankly, the only big on this list, not saying that some of the ones that are on the list deserve it or don't deserve it, but the only one that I would have potentially over Ezi is Jonquel Jones. Every other big on this list, I'm taking Ezi over. And I felt like the first name that does come to mind, if you're gonna make me take one off, would be Bree Jones. She's been solid, but she started the season on a minutes restriction. The averages don't kind of pop off the screen. While I'm a very big Bree Jones fan, I think she's been incredibly solid. But for what Ezi does, I'm taking Ezi. And even on the guard front, you know, I was a little bit surprised to see Kelsey Mitchell make the All-Star game. Three All-Stars from the Fever. I mean, Caitlin was going to get in with the fan vote, and I think she absolutely deserves to be in. Aaliyah Boston starts the season, you know, a little bit slower, but has been really, really solid over the past couple of weeks. Kelsey Mitchell I feel like I've been really impressed with recently, kind of how she's been kind of growing into a role as a winning player and finding how to best play off of Aaliyah and Caitlin when they're both on the court together. I would have taken Kennedy over her. I mean, there's an argument if you get into team records, if you're someone that kind of thinks in that, which is obviously it's different standards for an All-Star game compared to an All WNBA team. But obviously Arike Gumbawale and the Wings have not have a great season as a team. You could even potentially look at Alicia Gray potentially for Kennedy Carter, just because the Dream have had their struggles this season as well. I just think those two should have been on this list, and I think there's different arguments for who you could take off and whatnot, but I would have. They were on my ballot. I'll put it like that. They were on my ballot. And another player, who is an All-Star but not talking directly about the All-Star game, I mentioned Jonquel Jones, and the Liberty, their ceiling might be the highest in the entire league when it comes to just being the best team, potentially, when they're at their best. But the Liberty need Jonquel Jones to be dominant. For them to win a championship, they need it. And we saw this earlier this week against Minnesota with her putting up 21 and 12. Like, that Jonquel Jones makes the Liberty so dangerous. So incredibly dangerous. And obviously the Liberty are good. They're 17-3. And Jonquel has not been dominant in every game. But for them, when they're hitting that championship level, when they're at their best, is when Jonquel is taking a lot of shots, is looking for her own shot, is being dominant. And I've kind of, now that we're at pretty much the halfway point of the season, like I said, the Liberty still at their best feel like the biggest threat to the Aces, who now have been looking phenomenal with Chelsea Grayback. They feel like the biggest threat, but only at their ceiling, because the floor for the Liberty feels pretty low in comparison to some of the other title contenders. And like I said, obviously they're 17-3. Obviously things are going well, but there's just a very big difference to me when I'm watching, seeing the difference between them at their best and them getting by and winning games. There's a very large difference to me, and when you get into a playoff scenario, I'm still intrigued to see that. But I mean, you see moments like in that Minnesota game where, I mean, it's like a 16-0 run or something like that in the fourth quarter. They hold the Lynx scoreless for a long while in that quarter. Like, there is like very much improvements from last season. Sabrina has improved from last season. Her ability to get off the dribble has improved since last season. I want to see them consistently at that highest gear. And obviously you don't want to be playing your best basketball right now, but when we get a little bit deeper into the season, that's something I'm going to be monitoring. It's just how often can they activate Jonquel Jones? Because when they do that, they're at their best. So that's something I'm going to be looking forward to. But I'm going to be looking forward to, obviously, the rest of this time as we head into the All-Star break. The All-Star game should be super fun. Team USA versus Team WNBA. Even though I do feel a type of way about some of the players left off the list, obviously the players on there are very good players. So it should be a very exciting game. So let me know if you had any takeaways from this past week, maybe with the All-Star team. And I'll see you next time.